Welcome to Half History Will Travel. This is Historical Newspapers, where I read articles from papers gone by and help add context to the stories. This episode centers around the murder of Colonel Henry M. Ashby in Knoxville, Tennessee. Especially in border areas, the war continued in scuffles and sometimes murders that had their roots in the Civil War. The Sweetwater Forerunner, July 16, 1868, Sweetwater, Tennessee. The murder of Colonel Henry M. Ashby. The Knoxville paper records the terrible murder on Friday last of the gallant Colonel Harry Ashby by E.C. Camp, a lawyer of that place. Colonel Ashby and Camp had a difficulty in the streets of Knoxville on Thursday. On Friday, Ashby visited Camp's office for the purpose of having a settlement of some kind, when Camp proposed to go out into the street and fight it out. On repairing to the street, the scuffle ensued, when Camp drew a pistol and shot Ashby through the head. The evidence at the inquest was as follows. Thomas Kane stated that he saw the whole affair. He was walking with Ashby, and as he passed Camp's office, Colonel Ashby said, "Here's a man I have had difficulty with yesterday, and I propose to go in and settle the thing right out." I told him he had better not, but he said he didn't want any enemies or friends without he knew who they were, or something to that effect. The two Camps and Clotworthy were playing cards at the time. Ashby went in and I followed him. When I got in and he said something, and Camp got up and met Ashby in the middle of the room. Camp said, "Gentlemen, you stay here, and Colonel Ashby and I will settle this difficulty." They walked along, making gestures at each other. Ashby turned towards the river, but Camp kept on, and Ashby came back. Ashby threw his hand against Camp. Camp took hold of Ashby's stick. A scuffle ensued and lasted 2 or 3 seconds. Camp drew his pistol and shot Ashby. Ashby fell at once. Young Camp and I were looking at it. After Ashby fell, he had his hands crossed, and Camp went up and pulled his hands apart and fired again. I think he fired twice. I think he got Ashby's pistol in the scuffle, and after he had fired the last time, he threw the pistol at him and pushed his own hat back on his head and walked off. The Press and Herald says Colonel Ashby, the deceased, was about 32 or 33 years of age. He belongs to the family that became illustrious during the war, in the names of Dick and Turner Ashby of Virginia. At the outbreak of the war, he was in Knox County, temporarily residing here. Like other young men of the age, he sought the saddle and the sword. He became colonel of the 2nd Tennessee Cavalry, and in the capacity surrendered with his command to General Sherman. We leave others to give a full notice. His slayer, E.C. Camp, is a lawyer by profession, and for some 3 years has lived in Knoxville. He is a man of no character, and his standing among lawyers has for some time been such that his recognition has always been questionable. He belongs to that low order of shysters that frequent the police courts of Chicago and New York. The wonder is that Colonel Ashby would have risked his life in such a contest. Camp was bailed in the sum of $5,000 to appear in the next term of the Criminal Court of Knox. This was not the first time that Ashby and Camp had run into one another. Camp, a Union Army veteran, had accused Ashby of mistreating federal prisoners and helped pursue legal charges against him for his crime and for treason. Those charges were overturned, and Ashby returned to Knoxville, where the two men met on this fateful day. Camp would go on to be a major coal tycoon in East Tennessee. This illustrates a lot of the animosity that Southerners had when Northerners came south after the war. I wrote a seminar paper and turned it into a conference paper which looked at the violence incurred by Confederate veterans in East Tennessee once the war ended. Hard feelings died hard in that region, and I found numerous accounts of attacks and murders committed on Confederate veterans. Many churches excommunicated members of their own church after the war if they had fought for the South. This sent many ex-Confederates out of the region and further west and south.